I've been thinking lately about the Buddhist teaching of anatta, or not self. This teaching to me has come to mean don't take yourself too seriously. And I've been following American culture war, identity politics lately, and it seems like I'm a f***ing moron and I can't do this video today. The problem is, it's like 7 o'clock in the evening. I've been up working since 8:30 this morning. And my girlfriend's been working from home and her son is home from school. And so I ain't got no space to get crazy and shoot my videos. And so finally they went out to get some tea together at Cafe Zartel nearby. So now's the only time I have to make this video and I can't seem to pull it together. Guys, let's see if I can do it. The flowers are beautiful. I love you. I love you. You're bright and fresh and juicy. Listen, okay, I'm gonna try and get this point across to you. So, I was raised in a bit of an eccentric household. Like my cultural identity, my lived experience is weird ass, hyper conservative 80s, 90s, John Birch Society, Midwestern, Wisconsin, white boy, suburban / rural, Catholic, that is my ethnic identity. And my mom was really committed to programming us into perfect little Catholic children. It didn't work, but she started her own private schools. And she got together a bunch of other Catholic families. And oftentimes these Catholic families had more children than they had money to support them. They had more children than they had attention or love to give them. So these children would show up. I'm not kidding. They would show up to school with their shirts on backwards and their crust on their nose, and they're vaguely dazed because they haven't been kissed or hugged or communicated with, and they're not really sure what the human condition is all about. They're kind of in their heads. There'd be like 10 or 15 kids per 2 parents. I joke, but it's not that far from the truth, okay? And this is my cultural background and my experience, and so I criticize and kid and inspect and poke and prod and think about. But the older I get, the more I realize just how important that identity was to who I am today. We had a teacher named, let's call her Mrs. Zukowski. Mrs. Zukowski would wear these white blouses, and she would button them all the way up to here, and then she would have this collar that would come out, and the collar would hang over a sweater that also went up to here, like a sweater vest. And then she would pull her black hair all the way back and pin it back in some kind of like hair out of the face, like coiffure humility gesture thing. That's what her head looked like. And the whole outfit was stern and severe. She was literally the prototypical blue stocking. And as she taught us, our 10 or 12 of us kids, in this private classroom, like rented in a building where there were all kinds of other weird businesses, like a dude who was involved in some shady stock business and sort of an always on the verge of bankruptcy ballet school. And then there was some weird resale business where they sold really cheap trinkets, half of which they would throw out in the garbage. And so when all of us impoverished Catholic kids got out of class, we would run to the dumpster and rifle through it. Oh, look, here's a pocket protector with a picture of Bart Simpson on it. Gold, Anyways, Mrs. Zukowski taught us about the truth of the human condition and the cosmos we live in. And that truth is, God is here. God made everybody. Underneath God are men. Then underneath men are mothers. And then underneath mothers are the children. So there's like a natural hierarchy. God is at the top. Then there's men, mothers, children. Cut to like 40 plus years later, I'm at a party here in Vienna. A woman comes to pick up her kid from the back bedroom where the said child is playing with the son of the woman who's hosting the party. You following me here? My girlfriend gets to talking to this woman, and like I'm sitting in the back, like feeling awkward and weird and, antisocial, but trying to connect with people. And somehow, my girlfriend likes to get people going. She gets really interested in them, and she is genuinely interested, and then they start talking. So she pushed the social justice warrior button on this woman. And she was in front of everybody, and everybody were like on the couches and sitting there, and the woman just started talking. And it became a speech about how there has been throughout human history a patriarchy, which was justified by saying God is here, and then men are underneath them, and then women underneath the men, and then children are underneath the women. And I started listening to her, and I'm watching her. And she, I kid you not, is wearing a silk white blouse buttoned up to the top with a white collar poking out over a black sweater vest. And she's got her hair pulled back into a humble coiffure, a coiffure of humility, right? And she's up there lecturing me. Again, 45 years later, I'm being lectured by the same school marm, the same justice warrior, only now instead of a conservative Catholic justice warrior, it's a progressive liberal social justice warrior. But here I am, a full-grown man, I'm still being lectured by blue-stocking women with coiffures of humility. So I've been thinking about the notion of identity politics lately, and I came up with a definition of what it is. So identity politics is when you take what you are and you turn it into who you are. Okay, so what I am is a white dude who is sexually attracted to women, born and raised in the suburban Midwest, living abroad now, a creative type, etc. That's what I am. Now, if I get that thrown in my face over and over and over, again and again and again, at some point I might make an identity out of it. It might become who I am. So of course, this is what happens to traditionally marginalized identities, people that are prejudiced against. There's an in-group and an out-group, and the in-group keeps throwing the identity of the out-group into their faces, doesn't let them be human at all, but defines them by these particular characteristics. Who they like to sleep with, what's the color of their skin, what country they were born in, that sort of thing. It's my opinion, belief, thought in this particular moment that when like that's how you radicalize someone, or that's how someone becomes radicalized, is when they take what they are and they turn it into who they are, or when someone else takes what they are and they turn it into who they are. I mean, an example might be, I'm a kid and I live in this particular place, and my parents seem to worry a lot about food, water, and shelter. And there's this type of people on the other side of the wall that the people on my side of the wall keep referring to as Jewish people. Okay? Now one day I go up to the wall and I start trying to climb it. Suddenly somebody's pointing a gun at me. And I realize in that moment that what I am, which is what I just described, a kid with these characteristics, now it becomes who I am. You're a Palestinian boy. You belong on that side of the wall. Fixating an identity, whether somebody else is fixating that identity for you or you're fixating that identity on yourself, this is how people become radicalized. And I think there's a lot of that happening, I mean, all over the world, really, but definitely in America. People are finding tribes and creating rituals and certain languages and certain in-group references and calling cards, and are doing this to the exclusions of their fellow human beings. And so suddenly you go from a president who explicitly appoints a vice president based on their skin color and gender to, next time around, a president who gets rid of any and all diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts and measures in his administration. And so we have contemporary culture wars based on two groups of human beings fixating their identities. But you know what? In my opinion, like the extremes on both sides, they're just like those blue stockings, those anal tentatively coiffured blue stockings the one that I knew when I was a little kid being told the patriarchy is great, and the one I met a few weeks ago telling me the patriarchy is the problem. So in Buddhism, as I've talked about before, quite unsuccessfully on this channel, we have this teaching of know or not self. And it's in my experience, a very subtle, deep, expansive, and sophisticated teaching which I have failed to successfully communicate again and again and again on this channel. But maybe today I've come at it a little bit sideways through this exploration of like identity politics and gender and sex and race and ethnicity and political affiliation. It can be so hard sometimes to look at another person and to really consider the fact that they're looking back at you with the exact same amount of subjectivity and feeling and desire and fear that you're looking at them with, and that you're 100% equal. My teacher used to call this true democracy, and he said, I'm waiting for the day that true democracy is born in America. He said, but he feared it would never be born because Americans were obsessed with status and with money and with success. And when you're obsessed with these things, you need to have people who are below you that you can pick on, that you can compare yourself to as you try and reach for the brass ring. The problem that my teacher would say is that you're objectifying the world. You're turning it into an other. And that term we use now, you're othering, or you're objectifying. So you're seeing yourself as the subject, the center of the universe, and everything around you, including the people, are objects. And I remember my mentor telling me once, this is the one true sin in Buddhism, is to objectify the world and the people around you. He told me you're not just a part of the world, you're giving rise to the world simultaneously with the world giving rise to you. So you're giving rise to the black woman across from you who's giving rise to the white man across from her. All of our identities are existing together. I mean, it's really kind of simple on some level when you get down to it from the Zen Buddhist perspective that I was taught. There's two aspects to reality. There's the relative and the absolute. And the way my mentor sometimes talks about it is, it's like an apple that you cut in half. It's 2 in 1 at the same time. You're not so impressed with that metaphor, are you? I'm not either. And whenever he says that, I'm like, can you pick something better? And yet here I am using it, because it kind of makes sense. You got an apple, you cut it in half. It's 1 and it's 2, and that's just how it is. There's 2 aspects to the world that we live in and that we share together. It's one cosmos. If it wasn't one cosmos, I couldn't be in that one cosmos with everyone from Ibram X. Kendi on the one hand to Elon Musk on the other hand to Barack Obama to Donald Trump. It's one cosmos because we all share it together. And yet it's 2 at the same time. It's the simplest principle on the planet, but in the world that we live in, it's just more fun to emphasize the difference, because then we can get in fights and we can pick sides and we can scramble for resources, and certain people can grab more and more resources and other people can get less and less resources, and we can distract everyone by skin color and gender and sexuality and sexual orientation and country of origin and that sort of thing. But I hope we're heading out of the postmodern era.
It is time for another edition of dubious philosophical statements from an amateur postmodernist. Thank you.
The postmodern era, where we suffered under the illusions of Western enlightenment, which told us we were inevitably moving towards progress. And then the last century, we saw that movement towards progress, which was rational and scientific, led straight to the gas chamber. So following that, we had a movement that said diversity is good. Let's celebrate it. Let's get rid of overarching historical narratives that tell us that all of history and all people are united in one way and moving towards one thing, right? Let's get rid of that. Let's throw those out. Let's deconstruct all the logical positions and the philosophies, and let's have a multicultural society. I mean, that's the era that I think we've been living in. And I think that's one truth. Diversity is one truth. Unity is the other truth. Somewhere in the late 90s, I had a drag phase. I would put on some really high heels, some stockings. I had a nice black dress, spaghetti straps, a big, terrible, terrible wig, and some extraordinarily poorly applied makeup. And I would go out into West Hollywood whenever there was a big parade, usually the Halloween parade. That's when I was living in Los Angeles. And I would just assume this personality. And when I got the accoutrement, of this character, the heels, and heels force you to walk a certain way. You have to sway your hips. The dress, the face paint. I became a little monster. And I remember at one point there was a white guy who was dressed like Charlie Chan. Okay, so Charlie Chan, just Google it. Okay, and you may not know who Charlie Chan is. I don't want to get into it. Look, it's a white guy dressed like an Asian woman. All right, not an Asian woman. A white guy dressed like an Asian man in a caricature, an Asian caricature that was a mainstream media figure long ago, considered to sort of be racist now. Meanwhile, so there's a white guy dressed like Charlie Chan, and I'm a straight guy in drag, right? And so I started interacting with this Charlie Chan guy, denoting that he was possibly being racist, because I was an obnoxious drag queen. And then he started getting in my face about how I was a straight guy co-opting gay culture. And pretty soon, I was sitting there as a woman in heels thinking, am I going to have to doff these heels because this mofo is going to roll up on me? I have no idea what the point of this story, except that we shouldn't take identities seriously. That's the bottom line. Other people's identities and our own identities, our own characters, our own selves, they can change. You put on a wig, you apply some makeup, suddenly you're a completely different person. The self is a kind of a creation between our insides and the outsides. It's a spontaneous arising, a birth that happens moment after moment. 1 minute, you're a lonely, straight screenwriter sitting at his desk, dreaming about having a girlfriend. The next minute, you're wearing drag in the crowded gay bar, getting ready to throw down with a racist Charlie Chan. Friends, if you want to support what this channel is all about, and in this moment, I have no idea what that is, you can go here, patreon.com/showsonjackhobner, okay? There are essays there for an eventual essay collection I will put together. You can support this channel at patreon.com/showsonjackhobner, or you can go to PayPal. There's a link in the video description below. Don't fixate and attach on your identity. That's what I tell that guy in the mirror every morning. Pluck that gray eyebrow hair. You're not a geezer. You're young and fresh. Don't attach to your identity. Get out there, kid, and conquer this world. Sayonara, friends.